Cryptic Radio.
I remember the first time I saw my reflection in the cold glow of my computer screen. A 25-year-old woman with a smile that concealed far more than it revealed. My name? It doesn't matter. What matters is the persona I've built online. The persona that thrives in the neon-lit chaos of 2020 Alabama. I live in a city that never sleeps. A city where the hum of everyday life blends with the echoes of dark secrets. And I am both a star and a shadow in this twisted carnival of existence. Every day, I wake up before dawn, my heart thrumming with a quiet excitement. The world outside is a mixture of frantic energy and uneasy calm. A perfect backdrop for the art I create. I prepare my streaming setup meticulously. Cameras, lights, and a carefully chosen playlist of eerie melodies that set the tone for what my viewers come to expect. I'm not just a YouTuber. I'm a storyteller of the macabre, a conductor of dread and fascination, and every video is a performance that blurs the lines between entertainment and the raw, unfiltered terror of reality. I was born in Alabama, a state where the legends of old still whisper through the pines, and where the southern charm masks a history steeped in mystery and bloodshed. Growing up, I learned to appreciate the art of survival in a world that often demanded more than mere conformity. But survival, I soon discovered, was a game of manipulation, a game I mastered with ease. I honed my skills by observing, by listening to the quiet confessions of strangers, and by understanding the unspoken language of fear. That's when I realized fear is the ultimate currency, and I was rich beyond measure. In the early days, my channel was just another voice in the endless void of online content. I started with harmless pranks, edgy stories, and cryptic musings on the nature of human frailty. But as my following grew, so did my ambition. The hunger for popularity became insatiable, and I craved not only the adoration of my audience, but also the thrill of power. I wanted to leave an indelible mark on every mind that tuned in, to be remembered not as a fleeting distraction, but as a legend, a name whispered in both awe and terror. I began experimenting with increasingly daring content. I orchestrated elaborate scenarios that blurred the boundaries of reality and fiction, inviting unsuspecting participants into my carefully constructed narratives. Every video was a masterpiece of manipulation. Carefully chosen angles, ambient lighting that danced with shadows, and my voice. A soft, casual drawl laced with sinister undertones. I spoke directly to my viewers as if I were confiding a secret, inviting them into my inner sanctum. Welcome, I'd say, to a world where every smile hides a secret and every whisper could be the last. My words, delivered in a relaxed, almost breezy tone, masked the cold calculation beneath. As my channel's popularity surged, I began to push boundaries further. I started filming in abandoned warehouses, deserted streets, and even places where the echoes of violent histories lingered like ghosts. I reveled in the atmosphere of 2020 Alabama. The hustle of city life mingled with an undercurrent of paranoia, the air thick with the scent of rain and decay, and the constant reminder that beneath every veneer of normalcy lies a seething cauldron of secrets. In these moments, I felt most alive, most in tune with the primal forces that shaped human nature. There were nights when I'd wander the dimly lit streets, my heels clicking on cracked sidewalks as I observed the ebb and flow of life. I'd watch families hurrying home, Couples sharing hushed conversations under flickering streetlights, and lonely souls who seemed adrift in a sea of concrete and neon. To them, I was just another face in the crowd, unremarkable, unnoticed. But behind my unassuming exterior was a mind meticulously crafting its next performance, its next act of calculated cruelty. My methods were as varied as they were brutal. I manipulated my way into the lives of those who sought connection in the digital age, offering solace with one hand while orchestrating their downfall with the other. I remember one particular evening when the city's ambient noise was punctuated by the distant wail of sirens and the murmur of restless crowds, that I lured a local influencer into a carefully staged encounter. He believed he was part of a spontaneous, thrilling social experiment. But in reality, he was a pawn in my elaborate game of control. I recorded every moment, the twitch of his eye, the tremor in his smile, the way his bravado crumbled as I unveiled a side of him he never knew existed. Later, when I uploaded the footage, it wasn't just his shock and vulnerability that captivated the audience. It was the unyielding calm with which I observed it all, the casual cruelty in my tone as I narrated the experience. I've always believed that art is found in the interplay of light and shadow, beauty in the most unexpected places. For me, that beauty was in the dark corners of the human soul, the hidden places where fear and desire coexisted in a delicate balance. Every new video was an experiment, a chance to probe the limits of human endurance, to see just how far I could push the boundaries before reality broke apart. And as my online persona grew bolder, so did my inner demons. I began to relish the act of creation itself, the act of molding fear like a sculptor molds clay. I took pride in every perfectly framed shot, every carefully measured pause, every whispered confession delivered in a tone so casual it belied the underlying cruelty. In the midst of all this, I became acutely aware of the duality within me. On one hand, there was the energetic, manipulative artist who thrived on the rush of popularity and the thrill of control. On the other hand, there was a darker, colder part of me, a part that reveled in the infliction of pain for its own sake, that saw life as nothing more than a series of calculated moves in a grand, macabre chess game. I often found myself staring at the reflection in my monitor late at night, wondering where the line between performance and reality truly lay. Was I simply an artist, a provocateur pushing boundaries in a world that craved shock and awe? Or had I become something far more sinister? A serial killer whose every act was a calculated step towards infamy. I recall one particularly electric night in 2020. The humidity clung to the streets like a living thing, and the relentless buzz of city life provided the perfect soundtrack to my inner monologue. I had planned a new series of videos that promised to be my most daring yet, a series that would capture the true essence of human fear. I spent hours setting up my equipment in a derelict building on the outskirts of town, a place where the echoes of past tragedies whispered through broken windows and crumbling walls. I lit a few candles to create a soft, flickering glow, just enough to cast eerie shadows without overpowering the natural darkness. As I adjusted the camera angles, my mind raced with possibilities. Each frame a potential masterpiece, each angle a story waiting to be told. The shoot went off without a hitch. I recorded one sequence after another, each more intense than the last. I spoke directly to the camera, my voice as smooth and casual as if I were discussing the weather. all the while describing scenes of unspeakable horror with a detached precision that chilled me even as I delivered it. In a world where every smile hides a secret and every shadow conceals a dark truth, I'd say, pausing to let the weight of my words sink in. Sometimes, you have to tear down the mask to see the face of reality. My tone was light, almost conversational, but beneath it lay the cold steel of a mind unburdened by remorse. Every new video brought me closer to my ultimate goal, not just viral fame, but an immortal legacy etched in the annals of infamy. I wanted the world to remember me, not as a fleeting moment of online entertainment, but as a force of nature, a dark muse who dared to challenge the boundaries of what was acceptable. And as my following grew, so did the whispers of suspicion. Some began to question the authenticity of my staged scenes, wondering if there was something more sinister behind the carefully curated madness. But I welcomed the scrutiny. After all, isn't a little fear exactly what fuels the fire of popularity? In the chaotic swirl of 2020, amidst a pandemic that left the world reeling and society on edge, I found solace in the fact that everyone was already primed for horror. The tension in the air, the collective anxiety of a world in turmoil, it was all the perfect ingredients for my work. I moved through my days with a confident stride, a knowing smile playing on my lips as I navigated the hectic streets of Alabama. The urban landscape was a living canvas, each alleyway an abandoned storefront, a potential stage for my next act of manipulation. I thrived in the dissonance of modern life, the constant barrage of news, the disjointed chatter of strangers, the unspoken dread that lurked beneath the surface of everyday existence. Yet, even in the midst of all this chaos, I never lost sight of the artistry behind my work. Every calculated move, every carefully scripted line was a brushstroke on the canvas of my creation. I wasn't merely playing a role, I was living it, breathing it, and in a way, becoming it. The transformation was gradual, a subtle shift in identity that crept up on me as surely as the night gives way to dawn. I began to relish the power I held over the narrative of my life, the way I could manipulate reality with nothing more than a camera and a few well-chosen words. Looking back now, I can see the paradox in it all. I built my reputation on being a master of manipulation, a YouTuber who could twist the truth into a spectacle of horror. And yet, somewhere along the way, I became ensnared by my own machinations. The line between performance and genuine cruelty blurred until it was indistinguishable. I had embraced a part of myself that I once thought I could control. A part that delighted in the cold, calculated infliction of pain and the thrill of watching lives unravel like fragile threads. And in that embrace, I discovered that true artistry sometimes demands a sacrifice of humanity. As I wrap up this first chapter of my story, I stand at the threshold of a new era, a moment when the limits of my craft will be tested, and the consequences of my actions will catch up to me. I know that the road ahead is fraught with danger, that the thrill of my dark endeavors may one day lead to a reckoning I cannot escape. But, for now, in this moment of electrifying solitude, I bask in the glow of my success. My channel is exploding with views, my influence growing with every passing day, and the city around me pulses with the rhythm of 1,000 hidden stories. This is only the beginning. The world may soon learn that even in the midst of modern chaos, there are those who dare to flirt with the darkest corners of human nature. And as I continue to broadcast my twisted vision to an ever-growing audience, I can't help but wonder, how long before the weight of my own creation finally comes crashing down? For now, though, I revel in the moment, energized, fearless, and ever determined to leave my mark on the annals of infamy. I wake to the sound of my alarm, a shrill reminder that another day has begun. In this tangled web of ambition and dread, the early morning light barely penetrates the thick Alabama humidity, filtering through drawn curtains and painting the room with a subdued glow. In these moments, as I lie in bed, the silent thrum of anticipation courses through my veins. I know that today, like every day, offers a new opportunity to blur the line between performance and genuine terror, to etch my name deeper into the dark annals of online infamy. After a brief stretch and a measured sip of bitter coffee, I sit at my cluttered desk, the command center of my digital empire. Multiple monitors flicker with the live feed of my previous uploads. Each view counts a pulse, beating in time with my own heartbeat. I meticulously review the comments and social media reactions that flood in overnight. Each message, whether drenched in praise or seeded with skepticism, is a piece of the puzzle that is my legacy. The thrill of knowing that millions are watching, that my every move is scrutinized and dissected, fuels a dark satisfaction deep within me. I relish it, for it confirms what I have known all along. In a world that craves spectacle and sensation, I am the master puppeteer of fear. Today's plan is particularly daring. A new series of videos designed not only to captivate, but to unsettle even the most desensitized viewer. I've spent weeks scouting a dilapidated part of the city, a forgotten industrial district, where rusted factories and abandoned warehouses form a backdrop as grim and unyielding as my own thoughts. This area, with its peeling paint and creaking metal, is perfect. It carries the raw energy of decay and the quiet menace of lost dreams, an ideal setting for a narrative that promises to leave a mark on the collective psyche. I load my camera gear into the battered van, parked discreetly down a narrow, graffiti-stained alley. The van, a converted relic of another era, is my mobile studio, a traveling stage where I can orchestrate the next act of my carefully honed art. As I drive, the pulsating neon lights of downtown Alabama give way to the harsher, grittier landscape of neglected neighborhoods. The urban roar softens into a low murmur, punctuated by the occasional siren in the distance, the background score to my thoughts. I set up in an old warehouse, its cavernous interior filled with the scent of rust and forgotten memories. I arrange my equipment with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. Cameras are positioned to capture every angle of the unfolding scene, while portable lights cast long, ominous shadows across broken concrete floors. In one corner, I stage a mock set complete with props, discarded mannequins, splintered wood, and stained fabric that all evoke a sense of imminent decay. Every detail is deliberate. Every shadow, a brushstroke on the canvas of fear that I intend to paint. Before the cameras begin rolling, I take a moment to center myself. I know that my performance tonight must be flawless. Each gesture, each word, laced with the confidence and cruelty that my persona demands. I run through my lines mentally, rehearsing the opening monologue in my head. "Welcome, my dear viewers," I plan to say. my voice soft and inviting, yet edged with a promise of underlying horror. Tonight, you step into the labyrinth of our darkest secrets, a place where masks are shed and true selves are revealed. I smile as I imagine their rapt attention, their hearts quickening in response to every carefully crafted syllable. As dusk approaches, I step into my costume, a sleek, form-fitting ensemble that blends casual modernity with subtle hints of gothic flair. It's designed to disarm, to invite curiosity while hinting at the unspoken depths beneath. My makeup is impeccable, accentuating my cold, calculating eyes, and the thin, almost imperceptible scar running along my temple, a souvenir from a past encounter that only adds to my mystique. I can feel the transformation taking hold as I slip into the role of the enigmatic YouTube provocateur. In that moment, the woman I once was fades away, replaced by a persona both alluring and terrifying. The live broadcast begins with a casual introduction, my tone light and conversational as I welcome my growing audience. "Hey there, friends," I say, my voice smooth and relaxed. "I hope you're ready for something a little different tonight." The chat explodes with excited messages, memes, and a mix of adoration and apprehension. I know that they expect a thrill, a glimpse into the darker corners of the human condition, and I intend to deliver just that. For the next several hours, I guide my viewers through a series of meticulously planned scenarios. I wander through the abandoned corridors of the warehouse, narrating with an ease that belies the underlying menace in my words. I recount urban legends and local myths with the nonchalance of a casual storyteller, each tale punctuated by the eerie creaks and groans of the old building. I point the camera at decaying relics, my commentary weaving a tapestry of fear that binds the past and the present in a single, relentless narrative. "This place," I murmur at one point, "once thrived with the echoes of industry, but now it stands as a monument to forgotten hopes, much like our own lives, destined to crumble beneath the weight of time." As the night deepens, so too does the intensity of my performance. I introduce an element of unpredictability, a live interaction with an unsuspecting local who had volunteered for what he believed was a harmless social experiment. The man, a middle-aged office worker with a nervous smile, is coaxed into a staged scenario that is as chilling as it is captivating. I engage him with a disarming warmth, asking him questions that probe the hidden recesses of his psyche. His responses, initially tentative, gradually give way to a raw vulnerability that electrifies the broadcast. Every nervous twitch, every faltering word is magnified by the lens, and I narrate his descent with a detached fascination. "Do you see?" I say softly. "How fear can unravel the fabric of our carefully constructed selves? How one moment of exposure can strip away all pretense?" The man's eyes widen as he realizes the gravity of the situation, his face contorting into a mask of terror that I capture with unflinching precision. Throughout the show, I remain acutely aware of the ever-present digital gaze of my audience. The chat scrolls rapidly, a constant stream of reactions that I parse with a clinical detachment. Every like, every comment is a small affirmation of my power. Each message, a testament to my ability to control the narrative, to make the ordinary seem sinister and the mundane hide dark secrets. And yet, beneath that satisfaction, there is an undercurrent of something else. The thrill of danger, the awareness that I am teetering on the edge of a precipice from which there is no return. As the broadcast reaches its climax, I transition into the most intense part of the evening, a soliloquy delivered in the cavernous silence of the warehouse's inner sanctum. The camera captures my face in close-up, every nuance of expression amplified by the dim red glow of strategically placed lights. Tonight, I say, my voice low and resonant, I have shown you the beauty of chaos, the art of fear. We have danced on the edge of sanity together, and in that shared moment, we have all become a little more real. I let the words hang in the air, punctuating the charged silence with a promise of further revelations, further experiments yet to come. But even as I revel in the adulation of my virtual congregation, a subtle disquiet gnaws at the edges of my mind. In the depths of my thoughts, I am aware that the stakes are rising. The police have begun to murmur about the disturbing content emerging from our beloved online platforms, and whispers of investigations and public outcry circulate like ominous clouds on the horizon. I push those thoughts aside with practiced ease. After all, control is the essence of my existence, and I have always managed to stay several steps ahead of those who would dare challenge me. Yet, as I conclude tonight's broadcast with a final enigmatic smile and a promise of more darkness to come, a small part of me wonders if the thrill of evasion can truly last forever. Back in the solitude of my van, long after the cameras have been turned off and the screen has faded to black, I allow myself a rare moment of introspection. The adrenaline of the performance still pulses in my veins, and I can almost taste the lingering terror that my actions have sown. I replay key moments in my mind: the trembling confession of the office worker, the hushed gasps of my live audience, the eerie silence of the abandoned warehouse. Each memory is a vivid reminder of the power I wield, the power to control, to manipulate, and to mesmerize. And yet, in that same breath, I am haunted by the specter of inevitability, the possibility that every act of defiance, every calculated cruelty, edges me ever closer to a point of no return. I know that tonight was just one chapter in a larger unfolding saga, a saga that will eventually lead to consequences too dire to ignore. The thrill of notoriety, the intoxicating rush of being worshipped and fear in equal measure, is the heady drug that has carried me this far. But as the engine of my van rumbles softly, and I drive away from the warehouse into the darkened streets of the city, I cannot shake the feeling that every light I pass, every shadow that flits across the pavement, is a silent harbinger of retribution, waiting to catch up with me. In the quiet moments before sleep, as I sit alone in the dim light of my makeshift editing suite, I begin to compile the night's footage, a collection of images and sounds that, when pieced together, form a tapestry of exquisite horror. Each frame is a carefully carved testament to the beauty of chaos, a memento of the moment when I transformed fear into art. I know that this is my calling, that my destiny is to push the boundaries of what is acceptable, to dive ever deeper into the dark recesses of the human soul, and to leave a legacy that even the most skeptical minds cannot deny. Yet, beneath the surface of this carefully orchestrated performance, I am aware of the risks. The world is changing, and the forces of order and justice are stirring. The police are beginning to connect the dots, their investigations tightening around the digital breadcrumbs I've left behind. I remind myself, coolly, that I have always been a step ahead, that my mind is a labyrinth in which no ordinary law can navigate. But in the back of my mind, there is a quiet, persistent voice, a reminder that every master of fear eventually confronts the monster within. As I finally power down the monitors and settle into a restless sleep, I am left with the lingering echo of tonight's performance. A promise of more darkness, more manipulation, more terror to come. The thrill of the spotlight, the adoration of a virtual audience, and the unyielding desire to push boundaries propel me forward. I know that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new experiments, and perhaps even closer scrutiny from those who seek to expose the truth behind my carefully constructed mask. In the fragile stillness of those early morning hours, as the first hints of daylight begin to creep over the horizon, I allow myself a single fleeting thought. This is only the beginning. The shadows in the spotlight are growing longer, and with every passing day, my performance edges ever closer to the inevitable reckoning. But until that day comes, I will continue to dance with the darkness, to sculpt terror with the precision of a true artist, and to revel in the exquisite chaos that is my life. I woke before dawn with a jolt, a mixture of adrenaline and that familiar insidious thrill that had become the very essence of my existence. The city outside was still cloaked in the soft hues of early morning, its streets lying silent and expectant. Yet, in my mind, the gears were already turning for tonight's performance, a new, audacious experiment designed not merely to shock my audience, but to etch my name deeper into the annals of infamy. Over the past few weeks, I had meticulously planned every detail of what I now refer to as Project Unbound. The concept was simple yet potent. Lure an unsuspecting subject from the ranks of my devoted followers, someone desperate for recognition or connection, and then orchestrate an encounter that would blur the line between performance and raw, unfiltered terror. In my world, vulnerability was currency, and I intended to collect it in spades. The chosen location for tonight's experiment was an abandoned roadside motel on the outskirts of our restless Alabama city. Its faded neon sign and crumbling facade whispered tales of past glories and modern decay. A perfect stage for a story steeped in fear. I arrived hours early, parking my battered van in a discreet lot behind the motel. The building's corridors, long, silent, and permeated by the scent of mildew and rust, promised an atmosphere of isolation and foreboding that would heighten every moment of my broadcast. Inside my van, surrounded by an arsenal of cameras, portable lights, and my trusted editing laptop, I prepared the technical setup with the precision of a seasoned director. Each device was positioned to capture every angle of the impending drama. Close-ups of subtle expressions, wide shots that revealed the decaying backdrop, and ambient audio to heighten the tension of even the quietest sound. I adjusted the settings until the red glow of the monitors bathed my face in an almost ritualistic light. Every detail mattered. Every shadow, every whispered creak of the motel floorboards was an opportunity to stir the viewer's emotions. I had selected my subject from a pool of fervent subscribers, someone who had repeatedly engaged with my content, someone whose messages hinted at desperation and a longing for meaning. His online persona was a quiet, almost timid presence among the cacophony of digital voices. I had reached out under the guise of offering him a personal, exclusive experience, a chance to step beyond the screen and truly confront the fears that haunted him. He agreed with a hesitance that I recognized all too well. A desire to break free of his mundane existence, coupled with an underlying terror of the unknown. The hours ticked by, with the measured precision of a well-rehearsed performance. As dusk painted the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange, I donned my costume. A sleek, modern ensemble with subtle Gothic accents that spoke to both elegance and menace. My makeup was applied with a cold, clinical detachment, highlighting my eyes with a clarity that could chill the soul, and leaving my lips set in a smile that was as inviting as it was sinister. Tonight, I was not merely a YouTuber. I was a curator of fear, an artist whose canvas was the raw terror of human vulnerability. At exactly 8 p.m., I initiated the live broadcast. My opening words flowed effortlessly, laced with the casual tone my viewers had come to adore. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice smooth and unhurried. "Tonight, I'm taking you on a journey into the unknown. Trust me when I say that what you're about to witness will challenge everything you think you know about fear." The chat exploded with excitement, emojis and rapid-fire comments streaming in as thousands tuned in. Their enthusiasm was intoxicating, a steady reminder that I held their attention like a finely honed scalpel. Once the introductory segment concluded, I transitioned to the heart of my plan. I guided my viewers through the desolate corridors of the motel, my camera capturing every nuance of decay, peeling wallpaper, rusted fixtures, and the way shadows danced along the walls with each flicker of the old fluorescent lights. The narrative was simple, yet potent, a story of lost souls and forgotten dreams, where every creak and whisper was a testament to lives that had been left behind. This place, I murmured to the camera, once bustled with life. Now, it stands as a monument to abandonment, a perfect reflection of the inner desolation we all sometimes feel. At the designated hour, I made contact with my chosen subject. A text message had confirmed his arrival. A single word, "I'm here," sent with trembling punctuation. I met him at the threshold of one of the motel's vacant rooms, a space that had once been a sanctuary of transient comfort, but now lay in eerie neglect. He appeared at the doorway, his face a blend of nervous anticipation and palpable dread. His eyes darted around, absorbing every shadow, every line of decay, as if searching for an escape. I greeted him with a smile that was both warm and unnervingly cold. "Welcome," I said softly, "to a night that will reveal more than you ever imagined about yourself." The next few minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. I led him inside, conversing in a tone that was conversational, yet laden with subtle, inescapable menace. I asked him questions about his life, what fears he harbored, what secrets lay hidden behind his eyes. His responses were hesitant at first, but as I continued, I could sense a gradual unraveling. Every time he hesitated, or his voice wavered, I captured the moment with meticulous care. I interwove his confessions with my own musings on the nature of fear and control, the narrative becoming an intricate tapestry of vulnerability and cruelty. As the encounter deepened, I introduced a carefully staged element that had been the centerpiece of my plan, a series of symbolic trials designed to push him to the very edge of his psychological endurance. One of these trials involved a single innocuous object, a small antique mirror mounted on the wall. "Look into it," I instructed in a hushed tone, "and tell me what you see." In that mirror, I knew, was not just his reflection, but the distilled essence of every fear he had ever hidden. For a long, agonizing moment, he stared into the glass, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if searching for a truth too terrifying to confront. His silence was a revelation, a raw admission that the terror I had crafted was working exactly as I had planned. The intensity of the moment grew until it reached a crescendo. In a swift, calculated motion, I advanced toward him. The room, already dim and oppressive, seemed to close in as my actions took on a sudden, brutal finality. What happened next was a blur of carefully executed motions, a struggle that was both disturbingly real and meticulously orchestrated for the camera. My subject's protests were muffled by the chaos of the encounter. His fear, a symphony that played in tandem with the hushed gasps of my live audience. Every movement, every drop of sweat, every stifled cry was captured in stark, unyielding detail. Even as the situation spiraled into a crescendo of terror, I maintained my detached composure. I spoke calmly to the camera, narrating the scene with a clinical precision that sent shivers down the spines of those watching. Sometimes, I intoned softly, one must confront the unbearable truth of existence. Tonight, we witness not just the unraveling of a life, but the emergence of something raw and unfiltered. A transformation born of fear. My voice, steady and almost soothing in its delivery, belied the violent act unfolding behind me. It was the hallmark of my art, a serene narrative overlaying the dark chaos of reality. In the aftermath, as silence reclaimed the room and the immediate threats subsided, I guided my subject, now reduced to a trembling, broken figure, through the final phase of the experiment. I reassured him, in a tone that was both paradoxically kind and disconcertingly detached, urging him to reflect on the experience as a journey towards self-discovery. The camera lingered on his pained expression as I delicately captured his whispered confessions, each one a piece of the mosaic that was my artistry. I could see the fear in his eyes, the raw vulnerability that he had never intended to share, now laid bare for a digital audience hungry for authenticity. Once the broadcast ended and the room fell into an eerie, heavy silence, I retreated to my van, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. In the sterile glow of my editing suite, I reviewed the footage with an almost reverent detachment. Each frame was a testament to the meticulous planning and dark creativity that defined my work. The night's events, captured in unforgiving clarity, were not just content for viral fame. They were the embodiment of my inner truth, a reflection of the cold, calculated persona I had honed over years of practice. Yet, even as I felt a surge of exhilaration at the thought of the video's imminent virality, a disquieting sensation gnawed at the back of my mind. Amid the rush of success and the thrill of control, I couldn't shake the realization that the stakes were rising, both in the eyes of my adoring audience and in the relentless scrutiny of the authorities. My phone buzzed intermittently with anonymous messages and curious inquiries. A single text message, terse and chilling, caught my eye. "We're watching." The simplicity of the message sent a shiver down my spine, a reminder that every masterpiece, no matter how carefully constructed, leaves traces that even the most elusive artist cannot erase. I dismissed the warning with a practiced calm, attributing it to the inevitable paranoia that surrounds controversial art. Yet, beneath that cool exterior, I felt the stirrings of a deeper unease. Every new broadcast, every daring experiment edged me closer to a point of no return. I knew that the police were beginning to piece together the disturbing pattern emerging from my channel. Hushed discussions in local news reports and snippets of online chatter hinted at investigations. Questions about missing persons, unexplained disappearances, and a series of unsettling online trends that bore my unmistakable signature. As I sat alone in the dim light of my van, reviewing the night's footage once more, I allowed myself a rare moment of introspection. The raw, unfiltered terror I had orchestrated tonight was a double-edged sword. On one side lay the intoxicating euphoria of popularity and the dark, seductive power of control. On the other, the creeping inevitability of consequences that could shatter the fragile equilibrium I had so carefully maintained. I could almost taste the metallic tang of fear and regret mingled together, a flavor that was both repulsive and utterly exhilarating. In that moment of solitude, I made a silent promise to myself. I would continue to push the boundaries of what was possible, to blur the lines between art and reality, even if it meant flirting with the edge of my own undoing. The digital world was my stage, and every broadcast, every carefully orchestrated act of cruelty was a step further into the abyss. I knew that I was dancing on the edge of control, a precarious balance between brilliance and madness, creation and destruction. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, I powered down the van's equipment and locked the doors behind me. The weight of the night's events settled on my shoulders like a shroud, a silent premonition of the reckoning that was sure to come. I glanced once more at my phone, a final reminder of the anonymous warning, and allowed myself a small, knowing smile. The thrill was intoxicating, even as a part of me acknowledged that every masterpiece eventually invites its own undoing. I drove away from the motel in a haze of mixed emotions, a heady cocktail of triumph and trepidation. The urban landscape of Alabama, with its chaotic pulse and undercurrent of despair, stretched out before me like an endless canvas. Tonight had been a resounding success in terms of virality and dark artistry, but the ominous whispers of consequences echoed in my mind with every mile I put between myself and that abandoned building. Now, as I navigate the early morning roads, the memories of the night's broadcast replay in my mind. The terror in my subject's eyes, the rapt, horrified reactions of my live audience, and the unmistakable thrill of exerting absolute control over another human soul. In the stillness of that dawn, one thought crystallized with alarming clarity. The road I had chosen was one without an easy return. Every act of defiance, every calculated cruelty, pushed me further along a path that might one day lead to my ultimate downfall. I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, hidden amidst the digital chaos and the physical decay of our world, the long arm of the law was stretching closer. But for now, in this fleeting moment of solitude, I allowed myself to bask in the heady glow of success, even as the seeds of retribution were being sown in the shadows. I woke to a dissonant blend of exhaustion and exhilaration, an uneasy cocktail that had become all too familiar. The early hours of the morning brought little solace. Instead, they revealed subtle changes in the rhythm of my life. My inbox was flooded with new messages, a mix of fervent praise and ominous warnings. The anonymous text from last night, "We're watching" had been just the beginning. Now, a series of terse messages, each more unsettling than the last, punctuated the quiet hum of my phone. They spoke of surveillance, of detectives piecing together the digital breadcrumbs I had so meticulously scattered over the past weeks. Even as I savored the lingering adrenaline of my previous broadcast, a chill danced along my spine. The line between art and reality was thinning, perhaps too thin. The city of Alabama, with its sun-soaked highways and neon-drenched alleys, carried an undercurrent of tension that I could no longer ignore. The usual cacophony of 2020 had assumed a different timbre lately. A jittery murmur of suspicion in every whispered conversation. A furtive glance exchanged between strangers on dimly lit sidewalks. I sensed that my meticulously built online empire was attracting more than just adoration and viral views. Somewhere in the shadows, the authorities were drawing closer, their interest piqued by the morbid beauty of my work and the haunting realism that edged into every broadcast. That day, I sat in the cramped isolation of my makeshift studio, my sanctuary turned war room. The glow of multiple monitors bathed the room in a cold, clinical light as I pored over the comments, the viewer analytics, and most importantly, the cryptic messages that hinted at investigations underway. I replayed the live feeds of my most recent experiments, the abandoned motel, the anguished confession of my manipulated subject, and felt a prickle of both triumph and dread. My mind, so accustomed to the rush of controlling fear, now danced precariously on the edge of paranoia. Every shadow on the screen, every unexpected pause in a live chat message became a potential harbinger of doom. Yet, even as apprehension threatened to seep in, I clung to the intoxicating allure of my art. I reminded myself that the beauty of my work lay in its raw authenticity, in the relentless pursuit of exposing the darkest recesses of human vulnerability. And so, with a defiant spark in my eyes, I began planning what would be my most audacious broadcast yet. A final, incendiary performance designed not only to captivate, but to challenge the very forces closing in on me. I decided on a new setting, an abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of town, a place where the echoes of lost souls lingered in every corridor, and every rusted door creaked with the weight of forgotten tragedies. This location, with its oppressive atmosphere and grim history, was the perfect stage for a narrative of descent and reckoning. Over the next few days, I scouted the decrepit building under the cloak of twilight, absorbing every detail, the peeling paint that revealed layers of time, the shattered windows that let in slivers of a harsh, indifferent light, and the pervasive scent of decay mixed with the bittersweet tang of neglect. My plan was to weave together elements of personal confession, raw emotion, and orchestrated terror. A broadcast that would serve as both a masterpiece of digital horror and a daring act of defiance against the encroaching gaze of law enforcement. I envisioned a live session where I would guide a small, controlled audience through the labyrinthine halls of the hospital, inviting them to witness not only the physical decay of a forgotten institution, but also the metaphorical disintegration of a mind that had long danced with darkness. In this performance, I would reveal fragments of my own story, the subtle cracks in the carefully maintained facade of my public persona, and in doing so, I would blur the boundaries between performer and perpetrator, between victim and executioner. On the evening of the broadcast, a heavy rain began to fall, its steady patter against broken glass and corrugated metal, lending an eerie rhythm to the night. Dressed in a new ensemble, a fusion of modern chic and gothic undertones, I stepped out into the storm. My hair clung to my skin, damp and unruly, as if nature itself sought to strip away the artifice of my carefully constructed image. I parked my van discreetly near the hospital's rear entrance, the vehicle's interior now serving as both my command center and a refuge from the storm. Every piece of equipment was double-checked, every angle, every sound input meticulously calibrated. I could feel the electricity in the air, the palpable tension of a stage set for a performance that might very well be my last. The broadcast began with my trademark casual greeting, though tonight, my smile held an undercurrent of something raw and unvarnished. "Hey everyone," I said in that relaxed, familiar tone that had earned me so many devoted followers. "Tonight, I invite you to step into the shadows with me. This place, once a sanctuary for the troubled, now stands as a monument to our darkest fears. Let's explore what happens when the light is finally snuffed out." My voice echoed through the deserted halls as I walked, the camera capturing every flickering light and every ominous creak of the decaying structure. I made sure to acknowledge the growing storm outside, its intensity a fitting metaphor for the turbulent forces gathering around me. Throughout the night, I guided my viewers through a series of staged encounters within the hospital's labyrinthine corridors. I revisited rooms where once, in whispered legends, desperate souls had sought refuge, and perhaps met untimely ends. I recounted stories of tragedy and madness with a detached calm that belied the storm raging both outside and within me. At one point, I paused before a dilapidated therapy room, its walls marred by graffiti and faded photographs of forgotten patients. "This," I said softly, "is where hope once tried to take root, only to be crushed under the weight of despair. Much like the fragile illusions we cling to in our everyday lives." The words resonated with my audience, drawing a blend of sympathetic gasps and uneasy silence. Yet, as the night wore on and the broadcast continued, the gravity of my situation began to manifest in subtle, unnerving ways. I noticed a peculiar shift in the chat, a series of messages that were no longer filled solely with adoration or terror, but with a sense of foreboding. "We know who you are." One message read, "Your game is over." The words sent a jolt through my carefully constructed calm. I paused, the live feed freezing for a heartbeat as I stared at the screen. For a moment, I felt the weight of inevitability, like a dark tide rising, threatening to pull me under. Determined not to let fear dictate the narrative, I pressed on with the performance. I introduced a segment where I laid out my own history, the turning point that had transformed a seemingly ordinary young woman from Alabama into a harbinger of calculated horror. I spoke candidly about the influences that had driven me to manipulate and control, about the thin line between performance and the grim reality of my actions. "Every mask," I murmured into the camera, "eventually cracks. Tonight, I let you see the fissures. I let you glimpse the human soul behind the art." The admission was raw, unsettling, and it sent ripples through my live audience. Some viewers flooded the chat with words of encouragement, while others typed hastily, fearful messages hinting at impending doom. Even as I poured my heart into the broadcast, the storm outside intensified. Rain lashed against the broken windows, and distant thunder rolled like an ominous drumbeat. I could hear the faint hum of sirens in the distance, an auditory reminder that the long arm of the law was drawing near. My heart pounded with a mixture of adrenaline and a creeping, unshakable dread. For the first time in a long while, I wondered if my relentless pursuit of notoriety had finally led me into a trap from which there was no escape. Midway through the performance, as I guided my viewers into a secluded wing of the hospital, where the air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, the unthinkable happened. A loud knock echoed through the corridor, a sound that reverberated with authority and finality. My breath caught in my throat as I froze, the live feed capturing every flicker of alarm in my eyes. The knock came again, insistent and unwavering. In that suspended moment, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The viewers' comments exploded with panic and confusion, their messages a chaotic mix of disbelief and dread. I hesitated only for a heartbeat before stepping toward the door of a narrow, dimly lit room at the end of the hall. My mind raced. Was this the moment of reckoning I had so desperately tried to evade? My hand trembled as I reached for the tarnished doorknob, the metallic sound of my touch amplified by the oppressive silence that had fallen over the corridor. The camera captured the entire moment in excruciating detail. The subtle quiver of my fingers, the cold sweat beading on my forehead, the flicker of uncertainty in my eyes. And then, as I slowly turned the knob, the door creaked open to reveal a pair of stern, determined faces bathed in the harsh glow of flashlights. Before I could react, a flurry of motion erupted. Figures in dark uniforms surged into the corridor with a coordinated precision that left no room for negotiation. My heart hammered as I recognized the unmistakable insignia of the local police, a force that had long been suspicious of the dark currents pulsing through my online world. In that surreal, heart-stopping instant, the carefully orchestrated narrative of my life shattered. The live broadcast continued in a disjointed stream, capturing every moment of my unraveling as the authorities closed in. I tried to speak, to offer some part of my carefully honed monologue as if it could shield me from the consequences. "You're too late," I whispered hoarsely into the camera. "This is just the final act." But my words faltered, drowned out by the clamor of shouts, the sound of cuffs clanging, and the relentless command of voices demanding order. I felt a cold, unyielding grip on my arm as I was pulled away, the camera's lens capturing my eyes, wide with shock, regret, and a final defiant spark that refused to be extinguished. In those final moments of the broadcast, as chaos reigned and my carefully constructed empire crumbled around me, I was forced to confront the inevitable truth: every master of manipulation eventually falls. The live feed, once a platform for my twisted artistry, became the stage for my downfall, a testament to the inexorable march of justice that spares no one, no matter how brilliant or calculated their performances may be. As the flashlights dimmed and the frantic energy gave way to the methodical process of detainment, I found myself alone in a stark, empty corridor. The weight of silence pressed down on me, a silence filled with the ghosts of every victim, every act of cruelty I had committed in the name of art and fame. I was led away, my mind a turbulent sea of memories and regret, the fragments of my shattered world scattering like leaves in a violent wind. Now, sitting in the back of a police cruiser as the storm outside began to subside, I could only stare at the rain-soaked streets passing by. A relentless reminder that no matter how adeptly one manipulates the shadows, the light of truth always finds a way to seep through. My last coherent thought, a whispered echo of my once revered mantra, rang hollow. In darkness, we find our true selves. Tonight, however, that truth had become my undoing. I awoke in a sterile, suffocating silence. A silence punctuated only by the dull hum of fluorescent lights and the steady drip of water echoing off cold concrete walls. The world I once ruled with calculated cruelty had shrunk to this confined, impersonal space. Here, in a high-security holding cell deep within an Alabama detention facility, I was stripped of the adoration of thousands, the thrill of live broadcasts, and the intoxicating control I once wielded over my dark digital domain. Now, all that remained was the relentless tick of time, counting down the moments until my final reckoning. The taste of freedom, once so sweet and seductive, was now replaced by the bitter tang of regret and inevitability. I sat on a narrow, steel-framed cot, the faded mattress offering little comfort against my bruised psyche. My mind, once a labyrinth of meticulously orchestrated schemes, now roamed freely in a disarray of memories. I recalled every carefully staged moment, every deliberate act of manipulation and terror that had elevated me from an unremarkable YouTuber into a modern icon of horror. Each memory, vivid and unyielding, cascaded over me with a force that was both mesmerizing and punishing. I remembered the neon glow of my computer screen as I broadcasted my performances into the digital void. The way my voice, calm, casual, and chillingly detached, had lured viewers into a world where fear was both art and currency. I recalled the eerie corridors of derelict locations, the raucous applause and terrified gasps of a live audience, and the rush of power as I pushed the boundaries of morality and legality. In those moments, I had felt invincible, as if the darkness inside me could conquer any force that dared challenge it. But in that stark cell, with its unyielding metal bars and the distant murmur of an ever-watchful world, the scales had finally tipped. The relentless pursuit of notoriety had drawn the long arm of justice closer with every broadcast, every carefully orchestrated scene that blurred the line between performance and genuine horror. The police had traced my digital breadcrumbs, piecing together the mosaic of my crimes until there was no longer a path to elude the inevitable. I remember the day vividly, the chaos of that final broadcast at the abandoned psychiatric hospital still seared into my mind. The storm had raged outside, and as I led my viewers through the decaying corridors, the knock on the door had come like a death knell. The flood of uniformed officers, their faces set in grim determination, had shattered the illusion of omnipotence. I had tried to maintain a veneer of defiant calm, even as my heart pounded in terror, whispering my familiar mantra. In darkness, we find our true selves. But in that moment, the words rang hollow, for the darkness had finally consumed me entirely. Now, in the sterile quiet of confinement, I was forced to confront not only the magnitude of my actions, but the undeniable reality that every act of manipulation demanded a price. My trial, swift and merciless, was a spectacle of justice. The courtroom had been a theater of contrasts, stern faces, solemn testimonies, and the silent, accusatory stares of victims' families, etched into every line of the wood-paneled benches. I sat there, a solitary figure clad in a drab jumpsuit, my once energetic eyes now clouded with resignation. The prosecution laid bare the inescapable trail of evidence, a digital footprint that traced every disturbing broadcast, every orchestrated act of cruelty, every calculated moment of terror that had rattled the community. I listened as witnesses recounted the terror I had inflicted upon unsuspecting souls, a series of live interactions where I had toyed with human frailty, as if it were a mere prop in my elaborate performance. Their voices trembled with raw emotion, and the weight of their grief filled the courtroom with a palpable sorrow. I could see the faces of the victims, the office worker who had broken under the strain of manipulated fear, the countless individuals whose lives had been reduced to mere data points in my digital archive of horror. And in that moment, I understood that my art, my so-called legacy, had come at a cost too monstrous to ignore. The judge's gavel fell with an echo that reverberated through the chamber, sealing my fate. I was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. A punishment that, in the eyes of the law, was a fitting retribution for the labyrinth of horror I had spun. The sentence was delivered with the detached precision of someone who believed that justice, in its cold finality, could restore a semblance of order to a world that had been turned on its head by my actions. As the reality of my fate settled in, I felt a dissonant cocktail of emotions swirl within me. Part of me, ever the cold, calculating artist, recognized the twisted poetry of my downfall. I had danced on the edge of darkness, reveling in the chaos I created, only to be ensnared by the very shadows I had manipulated. Yet, another part of me, perhaps buried deep beneath layers of defiance and cruelty, wondered if there might have been another way. A chance, however slim, to repent or to reclaim some shred of humanity. But, in that sterile cell, with nothing but my thoughts and the oppressive weight of inevitable consequence, any hope of redemption seemed as distant as the echo of a long-forgotten broadcast. In the quiet hours of that long, solitary night, I allowed myself a moment of introspection. I replayed the milestones of my dark journey in my mind. The thrill of a live broadcast, the adrenaline rush of manipulating unsuspecting victims, the fleeting moments when I glimpsed the raw truth behind my carefully constructed mask, and with each recollection, I felt a profound, unrelenting emptiness. The allure of notoriety, once so intoxicating, now lay in ruins, replaced by the crushing burden of a legacy built on pain and fear. I also recalled the faces of those who had once looked to me for a twisted form of inspiration, the viewers who had cheered my exploits, the fans who had idolized the enigma I had become. Their adoration had been the fuel to my fire, a constant reminder of my power over the collective psyche. Now, as I sat in the darkness of my cell, that adoration was reduced to a distant memory, a flickering light extinguished by the inexorable march of justice. Outside the confines of my cell, life in Alabama continued its relentless pace, a bustling, indifferent world that had once served as my stage. The city, with its cacophony of honking cars, vibrant neon signs, and the perpetual hum of everyday existence, had moved on from the terror I had inflicted upon it. Yet, in every shadowed corner, every whispered rumor in a crowded diner, there lingered the ghost of my transgressions, a reminder that even the most meticulously crafted nightmare leaves behind echoes that time cannot erase. Now, I am left with nothing but the cold truth of my fate and the echoes of my final broadcast. The courtroom, the prison, and even these bleak, unforgiving walls bear silent witness to the unraveling of a life that once reveled in darkness. I have become a cautionary tale, a modern parable of unchecked ambition and the inevitable fall of those who dare to manipulate the very essence of fear. In this final, unyielding moment of reflection, I can only whisper a final truth, a mantra that once defined my existence, but now serves as a bitter epitaph. In darkness, we find our true selves, but now, that truth is no longer a declaration of empowerment. It is a dirge for a soul that, in its relentless pursuit of notoriety and terror, lost all semblance of humanity. As the stark light of dawn begins to seep through the narrow window of my cell, I close my eyes and accept the inexorable reality of my sentence. The stage has been extinguished, the cameras silenced, and the reign of a twisted artist is finally over. And so, as the world outside carries on in its indifferent chaos, I remain, forever confined by the consequences of my actions, a stark reminder that even the darkest shadows must eventually yield to the light of justice.